And now, from beyond our dimension, this is the Jeff Mara Podcast. Here's Jeff.
My guest is John Ventry, former multi-state director for the Mutual UFO Network, author of 11 books, and columnist for many different UFO magazines. He has also appeared in 50 episodes on 7 TV series, including Hangar 1, and he was a candidate for the governor of Pennsylvania in 2022. John, thanks for joining me and welcome.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Jeff.
So would have you been the first ufologist governor if you would have won?
Oh, absolutely. You know, we don't really have anybody in this field. I think Stephen Bassett, he's a lobbyist, and he ran, I think he ran for a congressional seat, but nobody's ever won anything. Bill Burns, who's a good friend of mine, he won the auditor position, but that's one that you apply for and nobody else is running. So it's like, if you just put your name in, you could win an auditor position for your town. So he says he's the first UFO politician, but he's not. But, the governor would have been a real position. And I really wanted to win that, for my, I got like a split personality. There's the UFO part of me, and then there's the political part of me that runs for office for the last 7 or 8 years.
Well, that would have been amazing. Did they use your UFO experience against you while campaigning?
Well, they did when I ran for county commissioner in 2019. I wrote up my press release and I sent it to the local paper, and they changed it. Local Hempfield resident running for commissioner, they said local Hempfield resident, former head of a UFO organization running for commissioner. So, and then when I ran for governor in 21, it was brought up again, but it only came up like in 2 newspaper articles. And then when the debate started, I won all 4 debates. Nobody brought up the UFO stuff. They realized this guy is for real. He wins debates. He knows what he's talking about. But I ran for commissioner again 2 years ago in 2023. And when I sent my press release out, I wrote on the top to that same reporter, "You've used this against me in the past. According to the Pentagon, this UFO thing is real. You got an issue, you contact the Pentagon." Actually, I called him, and his reply to me was, "Yeah, funny how quickly that changed. Not a word." So, if anything, this whole disclosure thing with the Pentagon and stuff has, it's made it easier for us where you can't make fun of us anymore. But they did.
Well, you used to work for UPS. How did you go from that into UFOs?
Yeah, well, it's funny. I had a 35-year career there, 26 as an executive. I was a multi-state security director and public affairs. The public affairs is why I'm interested in politics. I had 22 executives along with myself. We'd meet with 22 federal congressmen and senators for Pennsylvania, West Virginia, and Virginia. But the security, my real job was physical security with UPS. But what happened was they had me traveling in 1995 and 1996, traveling all over the country. And it's kind of boring. I'm not a drinker. I don't hang out in bars, but I've always had all these ideas. And I remember I was in Boynton Beach, Florida, and I walked down to the desk and I said, "Give me a couple pieces of paper." And I went up to my room and I just started writing. And boy, from that point on, I started writing my first book. This one here, I don't know if you can see it if you're filming me, but it's 12/21/2012, A Prophecy. It's about the Mayan calendar and all of that. But, it was odd. I wanted to write this action novel and end time prophecy, but in researching it, I kept coming across different cultures talking about star people, getting knowledge from people from the sky, people on flying shields. It was pretty obvious they were talking about UFOs. So once I got the book and everything going, it gave me the idea. Let me look into the UFO field. So I'm like 41 years old in 1998. I know absolutely nothing about UFOs, nothing. So I joined the Mutual UFO Network because I used to see them on X-Files, those MUFON guys, whoever they were, so I joined, but that's a totally different start than anybody else. Most of the people I know and talk to, oh yeah, I saw a UFO. I've been a fan since I was 10 years old. I've always liked it. I didn't even look at it till I was 41. So that's how I got started, by researching my other books.
Well, while overseeing tons of cases as a state director for many states, can you share with us some of the most shocking cases that's come across your desk?
Yeah, well, the biggest case I did was in 2008. We had this UFO wave across Pennsylvania, and I remember it. I'm here, and I'm, on my computer, I'm getting phone calls. We've got these objects that seem to be coming out of these lights coming out of Lake Erie. In the northern part of the state here. I'm in the Pittsburgh area, and I'm looking at these cases, and they're up in East Lake, Ohio. They're being seen in Wheeling, West Virginia, Pittsburgh, then across the state at Penn State, and the bulk of cases over in the Philly, Bucks County area. So, we got involved in this case at the time. We were getting, I think, like 93 cases a year. And in this like 2-3 month period, we got like 253 cases, different people reporting UFOs. So it became a huge case. And then in the middle of investigating it, MUFON decided that they were going to do their first TV show with Discovery Channel, UFOs Over Earth. So they did 3 episodes. One was on the Mexico case, one on a North Carolina case, Bledsoe. And they needed a third case. So they said, John, we know you got this thing going on. Do you want to, let's do it for TV? Because there's a lot of evidence here. We had radar and we had trace evidence. So we got the Discovery Channel involved in this. And it was really cool. It's not what you want to do because you don't want the media involved in an investigation and, until after you're done. But they helped us a lot in that they paid for lab work to be done. And that's stuff that, unless we could find somebody going to do it pro bono, we wouldn't have been able to get that done. So, but it was a cool investigation. There were 2 main cases. And from that, I've done, I think, 5 different TV shows and the Anderson Cooper show based on this case. It was huge. The year started with Stevensville in Texas, which I'm sure you're familiar with,
Yeah.
the Stevensville case in January. And then ours started developing in April, May, June, July. So, the year kind of started with Stevensville, but it ended in Pennsylvania, by the time this whole thing was investigated. But there were 2 main cases. One was an architect. He lived in this couple of $1 million home, and he saw a 5 or 6 sided UFO moving really slow in the sky. And there was a heat lightning storm. He could actually see the seams. It looked like triangular craft docked on a mothership. And so he reported it, and he saw it twice, and his wife saw it once, and he reported it. So Bob Gardner was the investigator. He went to the Philly airport. He got cleared, and he went up there and he said, well, on this date at this time, we had a report. So she went to her, her radar, and she goes, yeah, right here. We had, and this is her words, we had a large object with no transponder on the screen, which in the Philly airspace, you're talking just like 20 miles from Philadelphia Airport, that would be huge because, airplanes could hit it and crash. And she said it veered off to the northeast, which was exactly what the guy told us. He said it veered off towards New York. It matched. The whole thing perfectly matched. So we had radar. And then that whole thing became unbelievable. She sent me emails, the supervisor there in the tower. She actually sent me 2 discs that had the radar on it, right? So I filed FOIAs, to get the FAA to acknowledge that this was real. They had this radar. It kept coming back beyond our record retention period, and they were just, playing around. And so I went to the woman in the Philly Tower, and I said, I already checked with MUFON people at the Denver airport, which they helped us a lot, and they read the discs. So this becomes a whole more intrigue. The discs she sent me were copied over, and he was able to pull that metadata out of it and print like 6 screens of an object on radar with no transponder. And I said to the woman in the airport that we were able to print 6 screens, and her response was, "I'm surprised you were able to print anything off those discs." And I said, "What?" It's like, "You sent them to me. You should have said, 'Oh, why didn't you print 10 screens? That's what I sent you.'" But she knew they taped over it. So we were able to get it. And I was never able to get the FAA to acknowledge it. But then she emailed me again and said, "I run an efficient office," after I reamed her on the procedures, that you got it there. It may not be sitting on your shelf, but it's in a file, right in your file cabinet. So she admitted that they had everything, but the FAA wouldn't admit it. But the strange thing was, we did that episode on Discovery Channel, and Bill Burns, we just did an episode. We were in the middle of filming an episode on this second case involved in this Bucks County, and then we were going to do this one with the radar. And the woman, she calls me from the Philly airport and says, "You can bring your cameras in now." And I said, "Great, I'm driving to Philly right now to film with a different witness." So I contact the History Channel, the producer, Kevin Barry, and I said, "Hey, we got an invite if we can go up there." And he goes, "No, you can't do that. We have a film crew there with John, I can't remember these names, the director of that one. And he says, ours is in 3 weeks. We're going to film this other one." I said, "Okay, I'll let her know that." I'm driving to Philly. About a half hour later, he calls back and he goes, "Hey, John, I got bad news for you. She must have said something to the New York FAA. I think it was the History Channel checked with the FAA. And they said, you're not allowed to go up and film at the Philly Tower." So I said, "Okay, well, we missed that opportunity, but we can still describe it in the show." I'm still driving. Half hour later, he calls me back. He goes, "John, I got really bad news. The History Channel has decided to drop that episode. We're not doing it on the radar." I said, "You got to be kidding me. It is so rare that you get trace evidence or radar." But they dropped that episode. Bill Burns and UFO Hunters did like 2 more episodes after that, and they canceled UFO Hunters. Their final episode was on, I think, on Dulce, the Dulce case in New Mexico. So that it was, and this is like, I give a presentation on this, and it's an hour and a half, so I'm kind of condensing it. But the second case was actually even better than the radar one. We had a woman about 10 miles away from this guy, Cliff, and in both cases, they're both awakened at 4:30ish in the morning by the dog barking. So now this woman, it's got to be 4 or 5 times she sees 3 triangular craft in the sky. They have 3 lights on them, and it's triangular craft. And the one time she goes out into the backyard, it's like an apartment complex, but she had a back door to go into the yard. It comes close, it's like 500 feet away, hovering, and it drops these like metallic sprinkles or probes into her tree. So, and she's looking at it, and then they get pulled back up like a magnet, just pulled them back up, and she's just standing there stunned, and it leaves. So we get involved again, and that same investigator, Bob Gardner, he goes over there and he does a really good job. He cuts leaves off that tree, and then in other bags, he cuts leaves from another tree in the yard, one in the front of the house, one down the street, and we send it to a lab. And this is what the Discovery Channel paid for, these labs. And so we send them off to the lab, and only the bag with the leaves from the tree that she say had these probes in it come back with trace evidence. So one lab said that, and each lab checked for different stuff. The one lab said that it had high levels of boron in particular, magnesium also, but boron. And I went and asked the witness, Denise, I said, do you have boron in your spice rack? And she goes, what? She had no idea what I was talking about. Oh, how does boron get on there? Boron is used in stealth fighters. It's used in paints in nuclear reactors. People don't have boron. It's not boric acid that they use in your yard. It's boron, right? So now the other lab with Dr. Levengood, who's a pretty well-known name, he said that the leaves looked like they were subject to high heat or radiation. And he said they produced a natural enzyme called anthocyanin. It protects the leaves from high heat or radiation. So we got all this evidence going. And the third lab came back with a substance on the leaf that they said was similar. And I got Linda Moulton Howe involved in this too. And she goes, John, I had this at a case in New Mexico. It sounds the same. Turned out it came back and it was urine from birds. So that one was nothing. But we had all this trace evidence, and the other case had all of this, radar. And I think it was as big a case as Stevensville, although Stevensville got a lot of press out of it. But we did the show on UFOs over Earth, and then in 2012. This is a funny story, too. Anderson Cooper contacts MUFON. They want to do a show on UFOs. So, here I am. I'm the new guy on their board in 2011. I'm a multi-state director. I only started learning about UFOs like 6 years earlier. So they said, well, John, you live the closest to New York and you grew up in New York. Do you want to go? And I said, yeah, I'll go. I know Manhattan like the back of my hand. I don't need I know exactly where I'm going. And so I go they were afraid to go on the Anderson Cooper show. That's my point. They looked at each other and said, I'm not doing it. I'm not doing it. Who get Ventry to do it? He's enthusiastic. So I went and did the Anderson Cooper show. I thought that was great. But it was really cool. We had this Denise woman there, the one with the probes and the metallic sprinkles. She was one witness because that was my case. But even more interesting, there were two girls there from Kentucky that were about 21, 22 years old. And they were there. And the point of the show was I was going to defend these three girls, right? They were going to tell their stories. But these two girls, they have this sighting in Kentucky. And they're probably 17, 18. So they're with three guys. It's a Friday night. They went and bought some beer, but they didn't drink the beer. And they saw a UFO. So they chased it in their car. And they're going over hills and, into the hollers and stuff. They come over a hill and they hit the brakes and stop. And there's like 4 or 5 UFOs hovering. From that point on, they have missing time. But they remembered it. What happened was they remembered standing in the circular room, and they were naked, right? Now, the one girl only remembered maybe 5 or 6 seconds of it. The other girl remembered the whole thing. But here's the part that's interesting. So, and I know you do near-death experiences and stuff, right? So she says, John, I'm standing there stark naked with the other 4 people. This gray alien walks up, and it touches my hand. And she goes, I have this flashback. She said, I had leukemia when I was like 13 years old. I was in the hospital supposed to get a bone marrow transplant. And she says, this same gray was in the room and touched me. And I didn't need the bone marrow transplant. And I never had the bone marrow transplant. She goes, John, this is the same creature, the same alien. And she viewed it as almost angelic, even though it was the gray. It was the gray with the bigger head. So what Anderson Cooper did, though, is he tricked us in that he had Joe Nickel there from the Skeptic magazine. He's on the board of the Skeptics Association. which we were never told that. So I thought I was there to just, give facts and support these girls. Well, they bring him on and he's just tearing into them and I'm combating him and it gets loud. I have a copy of it. I had the producer send me a copy of it. So I have a copy. I do that on every time I'm on TV. I get a producer copy by the producers sent to me. So, Joe and I are arguing, but what happened was the show was the daytime show, not Anderson 360. So it was edited, and then it appeared the following week on TV. And the things I said that the audience liked when they applauded and stuff, they cut that out. And when they laughed at Joe Nickel, like he said to the girls, I know what you saw. He said it was the planet Jupiter. And the whole audience laughed. And I said, Jupiter? I said, Jupiter's like 5,000 times the size of Earth. They're seeing an object 500 feet in the sky. They could hit it with a rock if she wanted to, and the whole audience laughed. They cut that out. Joe Nickel, I don't know how the O'Hare Airport case came up, but Joe Nickel says, yeah, that case was when it freezes in the cloud and a hole punch cloud where it freezes and punches a hole. And I said, Joe, it was 53 degrees that day. You don't get hole punch clouds unless it's below freezing. They cut that out. So it was highly edited. And then the last 5 minutes, they brought a psychic medium on that standing there telling Anderson Cooper that his family line goes back to Lemuria prior to Atlantis. And I'm sitting there shaking my head and he goes, I said, why did they do this? Why did they do this? They had me, they had 3 witnesses. We could have told our story. Even if Joe was there, I thought I combated him pretty well, even though they edited it. And then they brought this on to make fun of it, So I contacted the producer afterwards. He goes, yeah, we probably went a bit too far with the medium. We didn't need her. It was a really good show. But you got to see, that was the reason the board of MUFON didn't want to go do it, and then I remember going to the next board meeting and they said, oh, that was terrible. And I said, guys, you don't understand. This thing is edited and how it went was not what they showed. It was not the way they aired it. So, but that all came from the same case in Bucks County. And, I went on to do Close Encounters over in Canada, Discovery Science. We did these 2 episodes. The funny thing is the Denise case aired, the Cliff case with the radar did not air, just like the Discovery Channel 4 years earlier. That one again, they didn't air the one with the radar. And I don't know if it's because of September 11th, we shouldn't have gone up. They cleared Bob Gardner. Maybe we shouldn't have gone up into the tower. That was going to look bad for the FAA. I don't know what it was, but it never aired. And we did it on another one, Alien Mysteries. But I've done it on, I think it was 4 TV shows and Anderson Cooper. But it kind of made me famous in the UFO community because in that short period, there's 4 TV shows and Anderson Cooper, and they know I'm a multi-state director and I'm on the board of MUFON. So in the UFO community, I became pretty well known. And I tell you what happened too. In 2012, Scotty Roberts out of Minnesota contacts me because he knows I'm running the Pittsburgh, Philadelphia, and Erie, PA UFO conferences. We were doing 3 a year. I made $35,000 for PA MUFON. We had more money in the bank than MUFON headquarters had because we were running these very successful conferences. So Scotty says to me, John, can you just give me advice, help me set up this conference in Minnesota. I got the okay to do the first ancient alien conference in the country with the whole cast. And he goes, I want you to be one of the speakers. You're with MUFON, you're not on the show. I said, okay. So I helped him. What a conference that was. 4 days. It drew about 1,900 people. It was packed every day. And there was 2 incidents that happened, because I don't know if it's my personality because I'm kind of aggressive, but Giorgio and I are talking, right? And I go up to Giorgio. He knows who I am. I said, hey, can I get an autograph for my son? So he plays me. Who are you? I told him, who are you? I said, I was just on Anderson Cooper. Who are you? So he's playing a game, right? So I said, hey, Giorgio, I run these conferences. Would you speak? He goes, yeah, I'll speak at your conferences. So I said, all right, good. So then we're doing the, we're up on the stage doing the panel, question and answers, all of that. And people are asking questions. And Ian Punnett was the moderator from Coast to Coast. So any question they asked Giorgio, then Ian would say, well, let's go to the MUFON guy. What do you think about that? I was able to answer the questions with the Droper stones. And there was another topic. Giorgio got really mad at me because I answered the stuff that he said, well, we don't know what happened to it, He comes up to me afterwards, goes, I will never speak at your conference. I said, okay, Giorgio, it's okay. I said, I'm a pretty good speaker myself.
Wow.
So the other thing that happened was Eric Van Daniken. Holy cow. He's one night we do just Eric Van Daniken Q&A. So he's up on the stage and he's drinking wine the whole time. And he's got this little manservant, and I'm being totally serious here. This guy with his hair up in a bun with a stick through it. And every time Eric's glass was empty, he jumped up, ran up to the stage and filled his glass and went back. Everybody's kind of chuckling over this, right? So I asked the question, right? And he knows I'm on the panel with him for the prior couple of days. I said, Eric, with your ancient alien beliefs and books, where does Jesus fit in? And holy cow, he pounds the table. Boom! It's like his wine glass jumped up. And he goes, Jesus Christ was just a man. He was not the Son of God. He's a man like anyone else. The whole room went silent. The History Channel said, all right, let's take a break. They come back after about 15 minutes. Van Daniken goes back up. He goes, let me explain. I was a good altar boy growing up, and I'm not trying to start a new religion. So every conference I do, I will introduce a little snippet about ancient aliens and how it has become a replacement religion, and don't get caught up in that. So even though Van Daniken said, I'm not trying to start a religion, he has started a religion where people believe aliens created us or upgraded us. And I think that's very dangerous. There's even, I saw an article, a professor had said, we're considering ancient alien theory to be taught alongside evolution. But he doesn't say he considers creation apologetics to be taught also. And that's one of the things when I run for governor, I'm going to run again. I'm announcing again in about 2 months. We're going to teach a creation apologetics science class on why evolution's wrong and the earth is 6,000 years old and the flood and everything is true. And there's so much science behind that. If anything else, it just puts doubt in whether evolution is true. So that's just a couple of stories. I'm full of different stories, but it all came out of this case there in Bucks County in 2008. So, and then we went on to do Hangar One, the UFO files, 20 episodes. And, it was me. I would say myself, and I think myself and one other guy were the only two in all 20 episodes. That was so cool because every episode was based on a real investigation. We had a file with scientific evidence, and it was based on a case file. And we were told that after season 2, when you get to season 3, that's when we really pay you, right? So they said the plan is, there was the show UFO. Well, prior to UFO Hunters, there was another UFO show with Bill Burns. It was on 3 years. UFO Hunters came on 3 years. Ancient Aliens, it was now 3 years. And we were told Hangar One is going to replace Ancient Aliens. We had higher ratings. 1.55 million people watched every Friday night. Ancient Aliens was barely hitting the million. Even though they were on at 9 o'clock, we were on at 10 o'clock, which is the worst time on a Friday night when people go out, at least single people do. That's the singles night is Friday, couples night is Saturday. So they dropped us, and they kept Ancient Aliens, and we were surprised. And I said, well, put us up on at 9 o'clock. We would draw 2 million people because people liked our show. It was very fact based, and they didn't do it. Matter of fact, Jeremy Ray, if you remember him, the kid with the red hair, I went to a MUFON a meeting, maybe it was a symposium, and Jeremy was there, and he said to me, John, man, I just lost my job, and I gotta find something else. I said, don't worry about it. When we do season 3, we're going to get really paid. And I spoke with Bill Burns, and Bill was saying that his season 3, he was getting $7,500 an episode. They started at like $2,500, then I think it was $3,500, then $7,500 an episode. And I said, you'll make 60, 70 grand off the show. You'll be okay for a couple of years as long as it runs. Well, they didn't pick the show up. And as it turns out, when you're unknown, you're supposed to get $500 a day to film. Well, our contract said $500 per day, and the producer crossed it out and said $500 for the whole series.
Wow.
So, and the first season, it was $300. Second season was $500. So I got $800 to do 20 episodes. That's $40 an episode.
That's
They
amazing.
fed us well, I got to say. Michael Barra did a couple episodes with me, and he goes, man, your show really feeds you guys, and as opposed to Prometheus. I said, yeah, but you're getting paid. We're not getting paid. I'm getting freaking grilled cheeses and barbecue, but you're actually getting paid. So that's how that all went. And, sometimes the backstory on a lot of this is actually more interesting than the cases.
After being involved with MUFON for so long, how has it changed you? And what I mean by that is, have you become disillusioned with the whole UFO phenomenon, or have you become even more motivated about it?
Well, when I started in 1998, I didn't know anything about it. And I looked at a lot of government documents, et cetera. And matter of fact, I wrote a book called The Case for UFOs. And I told Jan Harzan and MUFON, this should be required reading. It's the entire history, and it's the documents, it's the evidence, it's the statements by important people. I bought in 100%. But what happened was in 2014, the West Virginia MUFON director says to me, John, you got to look at abductions. See, I had stayed away from the alien abduction because MUFON has an abduction research team. So I didn't get involved in that. I just did the scientific investigation of what's in the sky, trace evidence. That's what we did. I no sooner started looking at alien abduction. And this is in between season 1 and 2 of the Hangar 1 series. And something shows up in my house. And, I will say I can do a 2-hour presentation on that alone, but I would say it wasn't human. And I don't think it was alien, although it could have been. I saw it more as a demonic type entity based on the noises, the things that were going on. Now, I did see I've never seen a UFO. I've never seen an alien, traditional gray. I saw this thing one time. I woke up at 5 a.m. and my bed looks right down the hallway. So I wake up abruptly, if you've ever had that happen. I look down the hallway, there's somebody standing there. And I'm like wiping my eyes, I'm slapping my face. I said, there's somebody standing down the hallway, right? So it's like 15, 20 seconds. I crawl to the footboard. So now I'm like 6 feet closer to it, and it's maybe 25 feet down the hallway. I'm looking, I'm saying, there's somebody standing there. And it was taller than the door frame. The door frame's 6'8", so it had to be at least 7 feet tall. It had a square head. So was that a helmet? So I'm thinking alien, right? It was backlit because it was standing where it was the attic door. And I have a finished gym in the attic, but there was light coming down from the attic, like the light was on, or maybe there was a craft there with lights on the house. I don't know. But he's backlit and I see this silhouette. He had a tiny 12-inch waist, long arms and legs, and a square head, and he's standing there. So I said, okay, you're taking kickboxing, step over the footboard and charge it and hit it as hard as you can. As soon as I had that thought, another voice, and this is the only time I ever heard like another voice in my head, said, you don't want to do that. You want to step off the side of the bed, or you don't want to do that because it could be unsafe. You want to step off the side of the bed and put the light on. That's what I did. It's gone. I walked down the hallway. I'm looking for footprints because the cleaning lady had just come and vacuumed that day, and I don't see anything. But here's the strange thing. I've got a 110-pound Doberman. I walk past him. I walk back. He's sleeping at the top of the stairs, kind of snoring. You can't walk past the dog and him not turn and look and acknowledge you. I'm saying to myself, the dog is out, almost like the abduction where the woman's being taken and she can't wake her husband up, you know? So it was really strange, but it got into, this persisted in my house from June of 2014 until January of 2019. That's how long this paranormal activity lasted. I brought a priest in, and it went away for about 6 months, came back even stronger. And the way I got rid of it was I had a friend that makes movies. You know, you'll see his movies on Netflix and Roku and some of those channels. And he says, John, I'm making a movie called The Exorcism Prayer. And I got 5 ministers, pastors, and I got 4 guys. I need a 5th witness. He goes, I know about your case because you presented it up here in Erie. He says, I want to do a show with you. And this minister from Sharon, PA, which is up by Route 80, close to Ohio, you know, almost towards Erie. And he said, the minister, when you'll tell the story, we'll film it. The minister will then bless you personally with holy water and oil, and then he will go room to room and exorcise your house. He did that, and it was gone. He drove it out. And there's so much more to this story. But what it did was, now, it's funny, for 20 years, you know, my wife and I got divorced in 1994. I moved to Pennsylvania from New Jersey. I assumed the kids were going to church and stuff, but I completely forgot about religion. I never said my prayers. I didn't go to church. The more I got involved in UFOs from 1998, I went down this rabbit hole. And the more I got into the paranormal, the unexplained, UFOs, I was 99% total lapsed Catholic. Didn't think about God, anything. So this experience, while I'm doing the Hangar One TV show, made me now question, is the alien from space? Is it interdimensional? Is it demonic? You know? And I come across Joe Jordan, who he was a MUFON state director in Florida. He then moved to South Korea to work, and he became the South Korea country director. So I contact Joe, and Joe was a friend of that West Virginia MUFON guy, Fred Saluga. And he says, talk with Joe. Joe just wrote a book called Unholy Communion. So now Joe was telling me he was an atheist, and he's doing an investigation in Florida with this Hispanic woman, and there's a gray alien at, like, you know, 2, 3 in the morning, comes out of the corner of the room, and she screams, Jesus Christ, protect me. The alien backs away and leaves. So Joe's saying, I don't understand this. Why would an alien leave if you drop the name of Jesus, right? So he asked for permission from MUFON. Can I go through the files and look for this in all the abduction cases? And they let him. He found 150 cases where the witness called upon Jesus and the alien leaves. So now Joe becomes a reborn Christian, right? And he goes, John, I'm 100% convinced that this is demonic. This is a demonic encounter. It's not alien, right? So, it's funny. I just had Joe speak at the Pittsburgh UFO conference last year. We had 6 pastors there, and they all came up to Joe afterwards and said, "Thanks for giving that talk. It was really good." But it was the MUFON investigators at the conference who said to me, "John, don't ever have somebody like that speak again." See, this is my warning to people about thinking that ancient alien theory is real and they're our gods. We got to be really careful with that. But they were so angry that I brought a religious guy who was a freaking MUFON's country director, but you don't want to believe him. You want to believe your ancient alien theory. You want to believe Giorgio. So it was a strange thing. And but what happened with me was, the more I looked into this, I could have been a demonologist. I could have been an exorcist. I studied that, all the books written by Gabriel Amorth, Malachi Martin. I read all of the haunting books. Then I went back and I read the alien abduction cases, Carla Turner, Betty Andresian. And I put a list together of markers of demonic infestation, markers of alien abduction. There was about a 70% overlap between the two. I don't know if you ever read Kenneth Ring's book on near-death experience and not alien, near-death experience and alien abduction. It's in there. It also came up at the 1992 MIT conference on abductions, but he did a comparison between near-death experience and alien abduction and said there's almost no overlap between the two. They're two totally different phenomenon. Well, I then compared his work to the alien infestation and my experiences, and I said, there's about a 70% overlap. So now I write 2 books, The String Theory of the Unexplained, The Ufologist, The Haunting of John Ventry, and now I'm not soured on the field. I just don't believe they're from space. I think this is something interdimensional. And it's funny, I would say a lot of the big name people who spent 20, 30 years in the field, Jacques Vallée, J. Allen Hynek, there's a whole list of them. If you read their books, and I read all their books, they went from the extraterrestrial hypothesis to the interdimensional hypothesis, which is where I went. It doesn't make sense that they're from space. They travel the distances. Would it even be an alien or would it be an android? Because if you got a 5-year trip, 5 years back, are they really going to send life forms, humans, or is this a robotic? And people think maybe even the gray is an android robotic type thing. So I completely got away from the extraterrestrial hypothesis. But again, like I'm saying, a lot of big names also got away from that. So I became this true believer in aliens from space. And like I said, I wrote a couple of books on it too. And I look at it as interdimensional, which makes a lot more sense. But, if you're interdimensional, there is a demonic aspect to this. And Keel, there's a number of people that have written about this. Wasn't the first one to come up with it. John Keel, others. There was the UFO Concern report from Lord Hill Norton. There's a lot that talks about this thing is demonic. It's not from space because of the things they do to the abductees, and they keep coming back. You can't stop them. But none of those people called on Jesus to save them. It's one of the things that, it's funny how time has gone. You almost can't say Jesus in the media. I did all these TV shows, and there was one producer, I'm pitching a show to him. I said, I got all these good ideas, and you call upon Jesus. And he said, hold on, you can't say Jesus on television. I go, what? And this is probably back in 2017-ish, I said, what do you mean you can't say Jesus on TV? He goes, you can't do that anymore. You can't bring up religion and Jesus. I said, well, you just blew my whole show. There goes my episode,
You have encountered 3 hybrids. And if you don't mind sharing at least one of the stories, but are you saying now that they're alien human hybrids or are they interdimensional human hybrids?
In my time, I've encountered 3 women that I would say were albino, part albino. And there's a whole story behind them. And I wrote a book on each one of those cases, and I fill in a lot of blanks because, the conversation on this with the second and the third one were, less than an hour, let's say. But then the first one was only during lunch, So, but then I wrote a whole book on it and filled in the blanks based on what she said. But 1999, I attend my first MUFON symposium in Washington, D.C. Now, remember, I joined MUFON in 1998. 1999, I attend my first symposium, and I'm single. I'm sitting there. The room's packed, had to be 400 attendees. I turn around, I see this very attractive blonde woman come in and sit like 2 rows behind me, and I'm checking her out, and so it's lunch break. I follow her into the cafeteria type situation. I said, I'm here by myself. You mind if I eat with you? And she goes, yeah, go ahead. So we sit down and I'm looking at her. She's got these gray bloodshot eyes, she was albino or something. Now, she doesn't say a word to me about anything with UFOs. So lunch is over. I go back, and it's probably like, let's say that's Friday, or maybe it was the dinner on Friday, and she's gone. She shows up for 1 hour, attends, doesn't come back, eats lunch. I never saw her again at that event, which I thought was really, really strange. So I get home after the 3-day symposium, 4 days at that time, because I was a member, an investigator. And that night, I have 4 nights of out-of-body experiences, lucid dreams. There's an entity in the room. I could feel the presence. I saw my Doberman floating in the air with his legs out and this hybrid kid poking him. The kid turns around. He's very muscular. He's like a 10-year-old, very muscular, giant forearms with the bones sticking out the elbow, big eyes and kind of hair plugs. And then there's another kid with this rat boy face and his hair slicked back, almost like Nosferatu is what it reminded me of. And I'm just telling you, it was just the weirdest thing after I go to my first MUFON symposium. Now, up until that point, I was a horror con, Comic-Con, collected famous monsters of filmland. I never had anything happen. I go to a UFO conference and, I got something in my house. It's funny, my girlfriend, she goes to the New Fork site. I'm with MUFON, my second year with MUFON. I don't even go to the MUFON site. She thinks of it. She goes to the New Fork site. She calls me. She goes, John, there was a UFO sighting at Penn State and Morgantown, West Virginia, the night you got home. And I said, Nancy, if I draw a line from Penn State to Morgantown, it goes right over my house. So I don't know. I said, is this something because I was talking to that woman, she was a very strange person. So that's one instance. The second instance, I'm in Roswell, 20, I think it was 2011 or 2013. I'm in Roswell. So, it's like I'm famous now. And I said, I got to go to Roswell. I got to go to the museum. I want to check all of this out. So I go to Roswell and it was cool. I looked at everything. But the last day I'm there at the museum, I see this other, albino looking woman. She's just in the museum, and I'm checking out all the books. She was in the book area where I was. They got the huge, gigantic, I don't know if you've ever been there, gigantic library, every book, magazine ever on UFOs. They got it in there, some in locked cases. So she's in there. I just noticed her. So I go to that evening, the Chinese restaurant buffet down the street, and I'm eating. She walks right in, puts her plate down, and sits in front of me and says, we got to talk. She goes, I'm a hybrid. And, she looked totally different body structure and stuff compared to that other woman in 99. But she says to me that she's a hybrid. And she sits there and tells me our true history. And I write a book called An Alternative History of Mankind based on what she says. And she, she's the ancient alien storyline, like the TV series, um, telling me all of that. And the funny thing with her, the highlight was where at that point I said, well, there's something, I think I brought up the demonic side, that type of thing. And she gets like deathly afraid. And she says, yes, we're afraid of them too. That's where I came up with this term, malevolent interdimensional entities. Because if you say demons, it turns people off. It's religious. So I call them MIEs, malevolent interdimensional entities. So, the funny thing is, the next day I'm leaving, I'm driving to Santa Fe. As a matter of fact, I'm meeting a guy with the last name Mara up there too. I don't know if you know him. I can't think of his first name. He's a chiropractor also.
Wow.
Joe Mara?
I don't know him. And actually,
Okay. He's a UFO guy also, and he's in Santa Fe.
I was going to say that actually Mara is my wife's name. The podcast is named after me and my wife.
Stage name. Okay. So I thought it might have been relative, whatever. But the funny thing is, I'm leaving Roswell. There's this one main road that has all these hotels and restaurants. Most of them are empty until, July when they have their festival. But I'm leaving. There she is. She's there hitchhiking, and she's got no purse. She's got no carry bag. You're albino and you got a short sleeve blue shirt on, similar to this, light blue with little white flowers on it. And you're hitchhiking in this 100-degree sun. And I look at her, we make eye contact, and something inside me said, do not stop the car. You keep going. It's almost like Black-Eyed Kids. The storyline with them. You never, they come to your window and they knock, help me. You never open the door and let them into your vehicle because they're demonic kids. So as I made my ride, I was thinking about our conversation, and I had already had the title and the cover art to the book. And I said, this is how you tell your story. I was looking actually to write a book with this ancient alien stuff because I was getting sucked into the TV series and their beliefs. And I said, based on what she said, and we had a long conversation, about an hour, I'm going to write this book. So that's the second one. Now, the third one was just as strange. I'm in Scottsdale, Arizona 2 years ago, 2023, for the Arizona Fall League, the baseball. And I've never been there. I'm going to my timeshare. I take a look, and there's this big complex to the right called Arizona Boardwalk. And so I said, all right, after you check in, go check it out. At dinner time, I went over there. And what a cool place. It has the UFO experience, a UFO-like exhibit museum. It has Ripley's Believe It or Not, a dinosaur thing. There's like 6 different exhibits and restaurants all around this circular complex. And so right away I go to the UFO exhibit, So I go in, and it's funny, the manager there looks at me and she goes, you look familiar. And I said, well, I did all these TV shows. She goes, oh, I recognize you. And I said, I see you got a speaker series here. Can I come in and speak next year? I'm going to come every year for the baseball. She goes, yeah, we'll book you and you can be our October speaker. So that happened, and I did that last year. But I'm in the exhibit, and again, I see this woman, albino looking. She's just in the exhibit. She's ahead of me. I see her a couple of times, whatever. So we leave, and then I go to a restaurant, and I put it in the book. I can't remember the name of it, Frank's or something like that. It's 10, 12 miles away. So, because I wanted to see this part of Arizona. So I go in to eat. Again, she walks in, and she's totally different looking person, body shape. She's got blue bloodshot eyes, but albino features, eyelashes, very pale, whatever. She sits down, and she's telling me, she goes, I got to talk to you. I got this book that I found in a hotel room, and it's got this information on UFOs, and that the first UFO encounter was the 1936 Black Forest case, and they're here, but they're also from the future, and they're aliens, but they're mostly our military that you're seeing, and we're able to come back in time, and that's a lot of what you're seeing, and what you're seeing now is just our developing this program. It was really cool conversation. So she hands me this book, and I never believed that it was real, and I still don't. I think that she put it together, you know, but she gives it to me, and and she's sitting across from me, and then she goes to get up, she hits my glass of water, knocks it over, it pours on my seat, so I can't follow her. I would have to slide across this puddle of water, and she leaves, right? So I got the book, and I then write which is hopefully my last book, called They Are Us. It's about interdimensional travel and time travel with these UFOs, based on what she said. But the only one that said she was a hybrid alien was that second one that was in Roswell. The other two didn't say that to me, but I'm kind of surmising maybe they were. And it's funny. Back around, I think it was 2011, I did the Philadelphia conference, and Connie Willis, who's on Coast to Coast, she's got a friend there. He's got a vendor table, tall, blonde-haired guy, maybe about 6'2". She goes, "John, come over here. I got to introduce you to my friend. He's a hybrid." Well, he was albino. He even said, "Yeah, I'm albino, but I feel like," he started telling me about these things, experiences he had. He goes, "I'm part albino, but I think that's, I'm part hybrid also," which was the first person I ever had ever said anything like that to me. So, it's strange. Those were my three encounters with these three women. And I ended up writing three different books on that: The Ufologist, The Alternative History of Mankind, and They Are Us. And I think they're really interesting.
Well, why do you think these hybrids are attracted to UFO events?
Well, I don't know about UFO events, but the two told me that they recognized me from MUFON and television. Now, the first one, I approached her at the conference, and she didn't know me, and we barely spoke about much. So I don't know that they're attracted to UFO events. Well, if they're hybrids, they're half alien, obviously. So they half human, half alien, and they wanted to get this information to me, or speak to me. So it's just interesting. It's just another strange encounter in this field. I went from this executive at UPS to going down this rabbit hole. And again, at the time for the first and second one, I'm going down this rabbit hole until something shows up in my house. And I'm convinced that there was something malevolent, and it was interdimensional. And my daughter and my kids, my son also had, when they were here at my house for Thanksgiving, they had a couple of encounters also, which I'm not going to go into.
Well, you touched on something earlier, and I wanted to follow up on. You mentioned the Chris Bledsoe case with the Discovery Channel.
Yeah.
As far as I understand, one of the times he was on TV, he claims to be mistreated and the episode didn't go well. Is that the one that he's speaking of? And if so,
Yeah,
what happened in your opinion?
Yeah, I think so. That was one of the three episodes of UFOs Over Earth on Discovery Channel. Matter of fact, I'm going to ask Chris Bledsoe to speak at my my Pittsburgh conference next year. I've never had him. But, the lead investigator on that was Richard Lang, who was in he was in two of the three episodes that MUFON did with Discovery Channel. And he was the MUFON International Director of Investigations, the Director of Investigations. But the only thing that went wrong with that was they did a polygraph and he failed. So, and then they aired that. They said, towards the end of the show, they did a polygraph and he failed it. And, and Lang in the show, I think, said, well, I don't know now, because he gives us all this information, but he fails a polygraph. So I think that's probably, I remember hearing that he was not happy with that, because it's a true case and he was really upset. So I think that was the part of it. But, the other thing in that show, it's a funny thing that the director was Robert Wise, who his father was a big producer and a director in Hollywood, and he was the director of the Unsolved Mystery series with Robert Stack. So, I mean, he's a good director and stuff. But there was a point in my show when I got to know him a little better towards the end, we were at lunch, and I said to him, Robert, do you believe in UFOs? Do you believe any of this stuff you're hearing? And he said, no.
Hmm.
And he kind of presented it in that manner, you know, that it was never conclusive that the 3 episodes were real. He always brought the alternative side in, and it was a big question mark as to whether that was true or not. And you know what's funny? The producer of Discovery Channel drove up to Bucks County for that case, and we had dinner with her, and she said this show is going international. We really like this idea. And I said, well, I still got like 4 more years to work. I'm not quitting my job and losing 60% of my pension. I said, I got 6 weeks vacation. I could do a couple of episodes for you. And she goes, oh, we're going all over the world. We're going to do cases all over. But these 3 episodes air, and the feedback was terrible because none of the 3 cases proved it. There was such a question mark brought into it. You know, like even our case with the trace evidence, the producer brought in another expert, and he conflicted everything that Levengood and Nancy Talbert said. You know, he goes, that's not true. You can't, this can't happen. You know, so it's like, you know, I think it was a different time 10, 15 years ago where, you know, these stations didn't really want to come out and say that UFOs are real. I'm convinced Anderson Cooper did not want that show to prove that those 3 women had UFO experiences because of his reputation. So, you know, even he said, I need evidence, I need proof to believe this is real. And him and I went at it where Anderson, you know, he said to me, you think that the military is covering this up? And I said, well, let's see. They covered up the Manhattan Project for years. They covered up the stealth fighter for years. And he said, well, that's, you know, that Manhattan Project was 50 years ago. And you know, and the audience laughed at me when he said that. And I said, you know, when you're not talking about the post office here, we're talking about the Defense Department. I think, yeah, they can cover things up, and they're very good at it, and they're first class, you know. So I don't know. So that's that story.
Well, what percentage, if you can make a good guess, are the ETs us from the future, demonic entities, or actual beings from other planets?
That's a tough one because, you know, it's funny. We don't have an answer yet. Even though you have these congressional hearings going on, which was funny. You know, when I got into this, I believed all the stuff I read, all the statements, all the quotes, all the documents, all of that. I was the truest believer in MUFON and on television that aliens were from space and they were real, you know. And I would point the finger at the government. You're covering it up. You know the truth, you know, blah, blah, blah. 2017, you know, the government comes out and, you know, it's not really disclosure. It's an announcement that they're funding research. I was a recipient of the funding and I didn't even know it. You know, and let me go into that a little bit. We did that Bucks County case in 2008. 2009, Bigelow, he gets funding from Harry Reid. $22 million. Well, I don't know how much they gave Bigelow, but Bigelow tells MUFON, I will fund your investigations, pay for the rent a car, a plane, hotel rooms, because that comes out of our pocket as we're doing this, if it's in an extended area. So, you know, and Richard Lang, the guy that was in the show, was heading up this group, the liaison between Bigelow and MUFON, and coordinating these investigations. So they're funding all of this. Well, it turns out that we didn't know the money came from the Defense Department and Harry Reid, you know? So, so MUFON's getting this money, and that's, again, another story that it lasts for about less than a year, maybe 10 months. MUFON gets $650,000, and then there's conflict between James Carrion, the international director of MUFON, and Bigelow, and there's infighting, and Bigelow pulls the funding. And you know, I like shaking my head, saying, we pay for these investigations ourselves, and now we blow it, and we don't have all of this money coming, in from Bigelow. I thought it was a big mistake, but so then what happens? So that's 2017, right? So then as this has progressed, and like I said, I run for office in 2019, they're still making fun of UFOs, but it gets to 2023, they're not making fun of UFOs anymore, and you're getting these congressional hearings. So now I've become skeptical. I said, wait a second, you're telling me that the organization that debunked UFOs since 1942, and I say 42 because I believe um, the case in Los Angeles, February 24th, 1942 was the start of the modern era, not Roswell. So this group for 75 years that debunked UFOs has switched their hat around and now is the group that's going to tell you UFOs are real. I say, hey, look, I grew up in New York City. I'm no dummy. I'm street smart. I'm not buying this one bit. And I haven't bought. I've become very skeptical to the congressional hearings and this so-called disclosure. Matter of fact, my congressman's pretty much into this, and he knows that I do this, and I keep telling him, you got to get me into this group. And he goes, well, outside people aren't allowed. It's just congressional hearings. And he tells me if they ever allow like Project Blue Book, outside people, you're the guy I'm going to push to get in there because you're a historian on this and an investigator. You know a lot, And I watch these hearings, and to me, David Grush, he's a guy that they used, told him some stuff, and he's there telling us that Elizondo is absolutely one of their guys. He's pretending like he got kicked out of the CIA. They're still paying him on the side, my guess. And if you look at how this came out, I remember, at the time, and I kind of laugh, you got this Academy to the Stars. I meet with Chris Mellon. We have lunch locally here. He lives about 10, 12 miles from me. So he wants to learn about the UFO field. And MUFON, he had called MUFON, and they said, well, you live right there. Go meet with him. It was 2017. And so we have a good lunch. He paid. He comes from a $1 billion family. I let him pick up the tab, So, and I'm telling him all this stuff, and I give him my book, The Case for UFOs, all of that. And, but what happens is then he becomes part of that group, Academy to the Stars, with Tom DeLonge. And I'm just saying, Tom DeLonge. So let me see now, take a step back. If you want to bring the younger generation in, you bring in a rock star. Now they're all going to be interested. So you bring in Blink 182, Tom DeLonge. So, that whole thing goes belly up because, they start selling shares. They sell 2.3 million in shares, but they got like $32 million in debt. So that goes away. So then after that, in comes Lou Elizondo. So I say, okay, let's look at this. Bigelow's part of this, I'm convinced, because half the people involved in this whole thing here were people with Bigelow and his NIDS and his other groups and Skinwalker Ranch, all of that. It's the same people, and they're now part of this. So in my mind, Bigelow's part of it. But, Elizondo, he starts telling this story, and there's two things he said that really got my attention, but never got an answer. Well, one, he said that, you're going to realize that these things, these aliens, they're not what you thought were monsters. They're really just our neighbors. And he never explained what he meant by that. And I'm saying, what? What do you mean they're our neighbors? Are you talking about Iran and they back engineered the 1976, that famous case where the craft crashes? They back engineered it? Or are you talking about Atlantis? What do you mean our neighbors? He never answered that. Matter of fact, I wrote a letter to the editor of the MUFON calling out Elizondo on that. What do you mean by that? And then he makes another statement that he wants to kill the UFO field. He wants to blow up the UFO field. And he believes that the government should be running this whole UFO thing, which I then, I said something to MUFON, be careful. They got rid of NICAP years ago. They bankrupted NICAP. And he's talking about you. and private investigators that have their own UFO groups. He don't think any of you guys should be involved in this. So he wants to blow up the UFO field, And then there's a Navy admiral or somebody at the hearing says, we think that we should prosecute groups or individuals that spread false rumors about UFOs. So, I'm sitting here saying, where am I now? Am I in North Korea? Am I in China? China's actually more open than what these guys are saying, But then all of a sudden, the MUFON website goes down, and the CMS, they lost everything, right? If you go to the internet right now to report a UFO, it's a government agency that's #1 on the search engine. It's not MUFON or NUFARC. I think MUFON has dropped down to number 3 or 4. And I get the journal still. I'm a lifetime member. And I look at it, and they're getting half as many investigations as they got 4 or 5 years ago. So there's something going on in the background there. And I don't trust this whole group. I think that they're a false flag. There's something behind this, and like that woman said to me, this is our military's technology. So how do you control that narrative? You take over the reporting of all of this, kind of push MUFON, NUFARC, others out of the way. And it's Lou Elizondo and the government. You can trust them. We want you. I don't believe it one bit. I don't believe it one bit. So I'm not down on the field like your original question. I'm more skeptical now than I've ever been because my encounters seem demonic and malevolent, and a couple of encounters, and I've researched this. And now you got the government saying, yeah, trust me, we're here to help. I don't think so.
Well, after watching this podcast, people may want to reach out to you and ask you questions. Are you open to that?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let me first say, if you just go on Amazon or Barnes & Noble, put my name in, you'll find my 11 books, and my website is just simply johnventry.com. And I have about 120 podcasts there that you could watch for free and access to my books and all of that. But you can email me simply at jventry1@comcast.net. jventry1@comcast.net.
John, before we wrap it up, can you leave us with a last positive message?
Something's out there. Absolutely, the UFO field is real, and I've interviewed so many people that have seen something, and, we have radar, we have trace evidence. So, I mean, it's real. I just get the feeling there's more to it that they're not telling us. And there was a famous quote. Oh, I can't think of the guy's name now. He was a skeptic, and on his deathbed, he made the UFO curse, which we kind of laugh about. Stanton Friedman would bring it up when he spoke and all of that. But what he said basically on his deathbed was, no matter how long you investigate UFOs, you will never know the truth. When you're lying on your deathbed and you ask, are UFOs real? You will never, ever know the truth. And you see, I think he knew the truth because he turned out he was working for the government, against, he was with Project Blue Book. He was working for the government. But you think about this. If the truth is they're interdimensional, can you really get your hands on it? Or if it's a cover story for military technology, which they're never going to tell you the truth because why should they? They don't have to. They run the military, So I now look at that guy's quote and I say to myself that I think he knew a little more than he said. But the field is real. The things people say are real. Like I said, we got trace evidence and we have radar. So I just don't have the answer to what it is. But the UFO is real.
John, thank you for your message and thank you for being my guest.
Thank you. You're welcome.
Thanks for watching the Jeff Mara podcast. I really appreciate you. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. And if you do, there are loyalty badges and other perks depending on your level of membership. All you need to do is click the join button underneath the video to find out more. Thank you for your support.